Hello, everyone. Please use the Q&A box below. So we will be addressing all the questions through the presentation, and there's also going to be a Q&A session after the first presentation. And yeah, without further ado, I would like to give the word to Masroor Khan, who is the National Project Manager at UNIDO, and Umur Gökçe, PFAN Program Manager. So Masroor, the floor is yours, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome to the session on bankable investment ready projects financing model preparation. Well, for those who don't know me, I'm National Project Manager, UNIDO, Pakistan, leading locally national project on sustainable energy initiative for industries in Pakistan. The project is basically dealing with the promotion of the energy efficient technologies as well as renewable energy technologies in Pakistan. So with the collaboration of the UNIDO platform, PFAN, we are trying to provide support to the industries, especially the SMEs, to have their projects, the pipeline projects, with some sort of support from access to financing, which is one of the issues that the SMEs are facing right now. So we have already done the first session in which we hear from the technology developers and the others who are engaged in the process. So we get some really very good inputs. And perhaps in today's session, we're also trying to support all the SMEs and all those engaged who are providing support services to energy efficiency to the industries, to how to get an idea in order to explain the audience that the bankable projects are very important if you are trying to get financially access to the finance. So what we are trying today is to hear from the financial side, what are the issues, what are the possibilities, whether we have some sort of solutions for the industries that can benefit in having access to finance. And if there are some difficulties, how to tackle these issues. So basically, this is the idea of today. And I hope from today's session, we will be able to provide some more support, mentorship to the financial sector as well as the technology developer side in order to produce some bankable projects models so that can support the industry for availing the finances. Thank you.
Thank you, Masroor. Umur, the floor is yours.
Judith, thank you so much. Masroor, thank you very much for the introduction. Again, thanks goes to you and your team for inviting PFAN and create synergies between these two important projects in Pakistan. Just for those of you who are seeing me for the first time, in case that's the case, I'm the program manager working at UNIDO's headquarters in Austria. And we have recently started a full-fledged project under the Private Financing Advisory Network that's targeting the Pakistani enterprises, and with the aim of supporting them in developing clean energy projects. And this project is financed by USAID and called Pakistan Private Sector Energy Project. I like to make 2 points, and I will keep it super short actually, because we've got a very heavy agenda today. So the first thing is I'd like to underline that this is going to be a very practical session. We'll share PFAN's experience in terms of do's and do not do's when it comes to preparing financial models and when it comes to presenting this to investors. I think this will be very valuable for you. And we've got a very good and very skilled and experienced set of investors who will also, investors and bankers who will also share their experience with you, and will provide you with certain tips, which I also think will be very valuable for you. And the second thing is, in the first session we organized last week, there were a number of questions on PFAN's operating model and how we support enterprise in Pakistan. On that, I would like to kindly ask you to hold your questions until a bit later, because we've got the deputy chief of party of our local team who's going to make a brief presentation on our project and the type of services we offer. And I think at that time, whenever what kind of questions you may have can be also answered by my colleague, and we can be more targeted on that aspect. So with that, I'll close and really looking forward to the discussions today. So Judith, over to you.
Thank you. So now we will we will deep into the content of this program, of today's program, and for that I will invite to join us Mr. Nagaraja Rao. I already introduced him last time, but for those who were not here, I'll just give a brief presentation. So Nagaraja is a PFAN head of investment facilitation. He provides support through transaction structuring, financial modeling, project risk identification, and investment negotiation support. His role includes outreach, selection, and support of clean energy projects, while simultaneously seeking out investors and institutions to fund them. He also provides strategic support in market penetration and investor outreach activities. So having said that, Nagarajan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Judith. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to be with you here today. I take this opportunity to welcome you to the second day. As my colleagues Masroor and Umar just spoke to you, in PFAN we help projects to raise finance, whether it is a debt or equity. This is a PFAN program, and UNIDO program. PFAN has been around since 2006. 2008 we started in Asia, and till date we have facilitated financing of about $2 billion in renewable energy and energy efficiency. This time, as we just told you, we started in PFAN operations in Pakistan about 2 years back, roughly. And this year we are working with our colleagues in Islamabad to bring you a special session on energy efficiency. So we have concluded a few points on this in the earlier sessions. One is, how to build a good business plan, and the presentation is mainly targeted. We have audience from the industry, like the marble or the ceramics, the cement industry, and the textiles and so on, which are basically, energy efficiency makes a lot of difference there. We also have consultants, and we also have energy auditors. So that way, we had a good audience last time, and I think this time also we already have, I think, about, I can't see the number here, but anyway. So let's start the session. This time today, I'm going to talk to you about financial model preparation. Now, this is a very heavy subject. Quite often, we see that the promoters are not really comfortable with this part of the deliverable to the financial institutions or with the equity investors. Most of the SMB entrepreneurs are quite passionate about their product or their services and their technology, but it is not possible for one person to be an expert in everything. So you should take support of experts and seek help where it is needed when it comes to finance. So let us look at this financial model preparation. So why do we need it is something that I would like to tell you. A financial model describes in numbers your vision. In the business plan, you're putting words on how you describe your business, how you want to grow, what product you will be taking to the market, or what service will be there, who are your customers. Whereas in the case, that same thing gets translated into numbers when we look at a financial projection. That gives you a good handle on, or it enables you to handle the questions that are thrown at you by investors. Unless you can speak their language, there will always be a gap between what you say and what they want to hear. And financial model or financial projections bridges that gap. So don't consider this as a training on Excel, MS Excel. It's not so, though it is heavily dependent. But today I'm not going to talk about that. That's not the reason why we are here today. We are going to talk about what are the implications of financial projections, how to read a financial projection, and how do you prepare a quality financial projection. So a financial projections, brings clarity and justifying the ask. What ask means is, what are you asking for? Is it equity? Is it a debt? Is it a mezzanine? Is it a working capital? Is it a term loan? Whatever be the justification, the ask should be justified in your request. It should validate your business plan. And it also minimizes the investor risk, because if you have a well-crafted financial projections, you will understand that it significantly de-risks your business model. When you plan your financial projections, it also forces you to visualize the future, at least for the next 5-6 years. How much you will grow, what could be your expense, what's going to be your market, what about your competition, how will you price your product or service, what would be the cost of production, and so on. So establishes a pathway for achieving goals, helps to indemnify risks and opportunities, identify risks and opportunities. So in broadly, let's look at this. What assumptions do you make at the start of the projections? Because you're contemplating how the future would be. So you're going to make certain assumptions. Then based on that, what could be your profit and loss account? How will it look like? How will your balance sheet look like, which is the statement of assets and liabilities? And the most important, how will your cash flow look like? Are you going to make enough money? Are you going to make bumper money? Are you going to be in loss? Let's see. Then valuation is very critical, as we talked briefly about it earlier. Without a valuation of your business, it's not possible for you to allocate equity to your investor. Suppose, for example, if your project is valued at, let's say, 10 million, and you want to raise 1 million in equity, that means you should be ready to give up 10% of your voting rights and share the management with your investor. Loan repayment schedule, which is very important, because the way the cash flow is, that is, your repayment schedule should reflect that. We'll come to that a little bit later in detail. We have the ratios, which are like, which indicates the health of your financial projections. So how do you capture the assumptions? So depends on which business you are in, but this is a general presentation, so don't go specific to that. Installed capacity will be there, obviously, if you are in wind or solar or whatever, if you are into manufacturing. In services, it could be something different. So you have to see what business you are in. It could be whether by ton or by unit or by units generated, or it is some by kiloliters, whatever it is. Then that is important, because you need to do a costing of that. How much is the cost of 1 unit of your service or product, and at what price do you sell it? revenue assumptions. Again, this is written for a IPP, I think. So you've got the power tariff, power savings, revenue mix, and escalation. But irrespective of that, if let us say that if it comes to your what's that in the energy efficiency, so we could look at, for example, energy costs, the maintenance cost, replacement cost, downside cost. One of the things is the annual savings, the total savings, and the investment. So why do we talk about this? The reason is that brings in the main aspect of your projections. What does that mean? It means that you are saying that you are capable of generating $1 million of revenue, let's say. That means how many customers do you think you will need to generate 1 million? How many invoices do you think you will raise per month? What could be the price per unit at which you will set? Will there be a seasonal variation? How do you tackle competition? Now, a summation of all this will represent your 1 million sales. For example, if you are saying that you're projecting $1 million as sales for the first year, and second year, let's say, is 1.2 million, whatever. So in the case of energy efficiency, it could mean the number of units saved, how you share the savings with your client, how do you charge the client, whether by saving alone or it is going to be a fixed cost plus savings. Is it going to be just a consulting where you will provide the consulting and they invest the money, and therefore they will save the entire, they will take credit for the entire savings? Or is it going to be like an ESCO model where you will provide the equipment and your solution and you charge them based on the number of units saved? So there are many important things that are related to revenue assumptions, and whether you are raising equity or debt, it depends upon your revenue assumptions. If you don't have a healthy revenue assumption, and if you are not confident about it, you are unlikely to raise any money. Then you have direct costs and indirect costs. So as we all know, direct costs would be things which are directly attributable to the production or the service that you generate, in like direct labor or the cost of material. Suppose if you are going to generate biogas, you will be buying the inputs, so you will have a fuel supply agreement. If it is energy efficiency, you may have a certain cost reduction that may, like labor, which may be directly attributable to the savings that you are going to make. Then indirect costs are sales, marketing, management, salary. This is an important statement. Sources of funds and application of funds. I recommend to my friends, all the energy auditors and the consultants to get this right, because this will help you in making it easy for you to sell your solution to the end user who is going to implement your solution. So whether you call that as the equity or debt, whatever it is, the number of how much do you need to implement your solution. Whether it is an equity or a debt or term loan, all that will come on the books of the end user, who is the person who is implementing your solution. But from your point of view, you should be in a position to clearly articulate the sources of funds and application of funds. Because you are working closely with your client, you should be able to discuss with him on these things as to what would be the best solution for them to implement your solution. One is to say that you're going to save so much energy, like in the case of, like I think from the last week's homework, we got 2 people responding. One was, I think, rice mill, and another was a cement factory, who sent me their business plan. Unfortunately, it came just about half an hour before we started this session. One, I think the cement one came a little earlier. So, I won't be able to specifically say about that, but I glanced through it, and I would say that the cement one is written well. The rice mill also has prepared it well, but it is brief. Like asked you to do so last week. But then, I'm happy that both of them have got the crux of the matter in their business plan. So if you have these sources and application of funds rightly articulated, it's a very quick way of assessing, how you are going to spend your money, which is one of the first questions that a banker would ask you or an investor would ask you. Then, if you go back a slide in your mind, we talked about assumptions, about revenue assumptions and direct and indirect expense and all that. So when you put all that into a accounting format, you get your projected profit and loss account, based on which you can figure out what is your earnings before interest, tax and depreciation, what we call as EBITDA, and PBT, that is profit before tax, and the profit after tax. I'm sorry that I had to talk quickly because it's quite a evolved exercise, but at the same time I want to give you an overview of it, and anything detailed, like Omar said and Masroor said, if the projects are chosen by PFAN, we would be allocating you dedicated coaches who would work with you for on these subjects. So as long as you have a overview of why we are doing this and how this will be helpful to you, that would be my purpose of today's engagement with you. Balance sheet. This is important because often, from Pakistan, my colleagues and in the last session also, some of the project developers were very clear that it is only a balance sheet lending that happens in Pakistan and not based on the cash flow of the project. But that is not surprising. Like I said earlier also, other countries which have gone through it, like say India or South Africa or Kenya or Vietnam, Philippines, everybody goes through these phases, and so not to worry about that. You will also come out of this when we have more sophisticated models available in like ESCO, Super ESCO, and all that. So we will, and even the financial sector will respond to that. Financial sector will respond a little slower because they have to see your business first. So you have to provide that track record, you have to provide that model which works, and then the money will follow. Cash flow statement. Cash flow statement should be prepared from your projected profit and loss account and balance sheet. Quite often people do not provide this properly. Their calculations are not correct. So you will need some kind of a professional help. If you already have qualified CFOs in your company, then you don't have to worry. But if you're a little smaller, then it may be worthwhile to engage somebody to help you with this. But then if you're selected as a PFAN project, then you will get these assistants. The coach will tell you how to do this. Some of the key things that you should also think about is scenario analysis. Especially what happens is that in the case of energy efficiency, it's so much dependent upon the oil price. Yesterday you must have seen oil has crossed $80, so everybody is interested in energy efficiency. When it was $40, nobody was ready to talk to you about energy efficiency. I mean, that is the mentality of the entrepreneurs, right? Unless it is a burning problem, it gets relegated. It is important but not urgent. That is the way the market reacts. So it's very important to do your scenario analysis. What happens if if the prices go up 10%, or what happens if it comes down 10%? What happens if your energy saving goes up by 10%, or if it comes down by 10%? This kind of scenario analysis provides you with a visibility of how you will tackle different situations. Break-even analysis: at what quantity will you break even? That is, no profit, no loss situation. Like if you are going to save, let's say 50,000 units, you are going to be no profit, no loss situation. That means only after 50,000 units you will make money. Depreciation schedule is important because this is a non-cash charge, but if you don't get it right, you will not be able to provide, you will not be able to price your product properly. And if you ignore this, you would be doing it at your peril, because if the pricing is wrong, your business projections would be wrong also. Loan repayment schedule. If you're planning to take a loan, it should be clear what would be the moratorium period, the disbursement schedule, interest rate, tenure, collaterals, all that. The key ratios, I won't go through all this, but two ratios I will tell you very clearly. One is the ability to pay interest. There is no point in going to a banker and asking for a loan if you can't pay the interest and if you can't repay the principal. So you should have an earnings which is much more than your payment. So the banker has some leverage in terms of things going up or down in your business. So usually they look at twice the interest as a cushion. So if you're paying $100, they would like to see your cash accrual at $200 so that they have a leeway in case things don't go right. In the case of interest plus principal repayment, that is what we call as the debt service coverage ratio. They look at something like 1.5, so that there is some level of comfort for any repayment that falls due. These are the common errors. You should read this. I'll pause for a second, but do take a look at this. My colleague, so they will be circulating this presentation to you, so you will be able to see this later. But these are things which we have seen because we've seen thousands of projects in PFAN, and we have helped a lot of projects. So you will see that whether it is hard coding in an Excel or whether it is wrong interpretation of accounting principles or not estimating your sales properly. See, capturing inaccurate capital expenditure, not deriving cash flow from your P&L and balance sheets, seeing debt without existing operations. So again, I'll pause for a second, just take a quick look at it before we go forward. Right. So just a recap, financial projections and business plans go hand in hand. You can't say one thing at one place and another place. So it has to be fully synchronized. Useful for lenders to get a better understanding of your business. That's what you're telling them when you give them their projected numbers, and you want to justify why you need the business, why you need the loan. Helps your potential investors to know the profitability and growth potential. Financial projections show discipline in financial management and helps to minimize business risks. Better financial management leads to much higher chances of success. Financial projections help you to monitor profitability, cash flows, and alter production plans if there is a need. Financial projections help you to realize potential of your business. Thank you. And now I would request any questions that you may have so that we can address the same. There are, I think, question boxes there which is provided for you. Let me give it back to you, Judith. I think you can take it better from here.
Thank you, Nagaraja. Yes, we have one question from Shahid Rashid. His question is, please explain, he wants to get a clarification on the differences between term loan and working loan.
Oh, please explain term loan. Sure. In the case of a term loan, usually it is taken for purchase of capital equipment. What do we mean by capital equipment? That is any equipment where you have benefits accruing to your business for more than a year. It could be 2, 3, 5, 10 years. So let us say that you want to purchase a windmill. Now you can, as a, you are, let's say yours is a cement factory and you want to do RE. So somebody suggests that if you put a 1 megawatt wind tower, that would be good. So let's say that it costs $1 million. You would take a term loan and say that you are going to repay over a period of 10 years or 12 years. That is a term loan. The reason for that is that if your benefits are going to accrue over a period of time, your repayment also should be over a period of time. Otherwise, there will be an asset liability mismatch. And the best thing for you is to see that you match your cash flow. So if because of the windmill, let's say you got a power saving of so much every month, and your loan is also matching repayments, you will not have a cash flow or a liquidity issue. So by and large, the term loan is for buying capital equipment, whereas working capital is something which is also called as circulating capital. It is your day-to-day operations. So you start with cash, then you buy your goods, you convert it into your finished products, you sell it, and then you realize the money back. So you have stocks, debtors, creditors, and then again, and cash. So that cycle that happens, it could be, it depends on the business. It could be 30 days, 40 days, 90 days, but depends on that cycle where you buy raw material, convert it into finished goods, sell it, and then realize your cash. So that is a working capital cycle, as we call it. So for that, the best way to finance them is through working capital. Banks specialize in giving you working capital loans based on the stocks that you hold and based on the average debtors that you hold, minus the creditors, because creditors are extending you credit, which is reflected in the stocks that you hold. So therefore, the working capital finance is a good way and efficient way of financing your day-to-day operations.
Thanks, Nagaraja. I don't see any more questions. So please, if you have any questions, send them through the Q&A box so we can address them. Maybe Nagaraja, as there are no questions, we could go back to these most common errors and spend a bit more time on that and see if there's any more questions on this.
Yeah, we can do that. How much time is there till the next session, Judith?
We still have time until the panel discussion. It's at for 4:10. So we still have.
No, how many more minutes? Right now, I think it is 3:35 in Pakistan.
Yes, there is. Now we still have 40 minutes or so.
14 minutes?
40. 40.
Just let me know. Thank you. So let us just go back to these things as we have time. So incomplete financial statements. What happens, we often see, is that people just almost like a scribbling, they just do a profit and loss projections and send it without balance sheet. And, if you are going to think that a 5-year projections without a balance sheet will be accurate, it will not be so. Because as you know that in accounting, it's a system of double entry bookkeeping, which balances out. So the checks and balances will be missing if you just give one statement and not the other. So once you give the P&L, you have to give the balance sheet so that, the carry forward of profits, the carry forward of your assets minus the depreciation, those kind of things can be properly addressed. Linking error, this is no big deal, but then quite often happens. This is equivalent of a clerical error, right? If the cell is ring wrongly, and then every time you do the calculation, it will give you a wrong answer. Formula error, yes, this is lack of proficiency in Excel can make this problem. Hard coding is what is known as if you put an absolute amount instead of putting a formula. I'll give you an example. Let us say that you are projecting sales, in tonnage. So the first time you put a assumption. So you say that you have got an option. You can say that I'm going to generate 100 tons. Now, and you put an absolute number 100 in the cell. That's not the best way to do that. Instead, I would recommend that you first put the installed capacity of your plant. Let's say the installed capacity of your plant is 200 tons. And then you want to show 100 in the first year. So then you say that first year assumption is the plant will run at 50%. So 200 into 50%, the 100, you will populate that as 100 tons. Because you have put the assumption that my plant is 200 tons, it will run at 50%. So my output is 100 tons in the first year. And then you say let's say that my selling price is $5. So then the next sell would be 100 into 5, $500. Now, please bear with me when I'm talking like this, because I have seen so many errors, this one across, PFAN is present deeply into about 50 countries, very, very much so in Asia and Africa. So bear with me when I talk like this. It sounds very basic. It is very basic. But then if you make a mistake here, you're actually jeopardizing your chances of raising money. Mismatch with construction period and revenue generation. So what happens is that here it's an accounting point. You see, till you're ready to make sales, all the construction expenses are capitalized. So let us say that you are setting up a solar farm. It may take you 6 months to put a solar farm. Now, whatever expense you do till that time you start selling is capitalized. Now, capitalized is a very typical accounting or a finance word, which says that you will not treat that as an expense till your revenues start coming in. So you say that, look, to set up the wind farm or so in this case solar farm, let's say you put the panel, you got the land, you got the connections, you got the connectivity to the grid, all that is done. Now, to do that, you also need land development. You have to have a security. You have to have land, the compound walls, the roads, all that things, say land development. Now, all that, along with that, you have the day-to-day operations. You need security. You need supervisors. You need workers. So all that goes into what we call as the pre-operating expenses, and that goes as a part of the cost of your project. And people often put that in the P&L, and that actually suppresses your profit. So you shouldn't do that. Deducting capital expenditure, loan repayment, and profit. So this again, we see this because people who have prepared it do not have the proficiency in accounting or finance that is required. Because if you have got, let's say you are going to buy a computer, if you are going to buy a tractor, if you are going to buy let's say even furniture, you can't deduct it from your profits for the year. That way you are again suppressing the profit, because these are assets that will give you benefits over a longer period of time. So therefore, you just need to book the depreciation on this and not deduct it from your revenue on a year-on-year basis. And even the tax authorities would not be accepting that position. Seeking debt funding have high debt to equity ratio. Quite often, people ask for debt without realizing the nuances of what you need and what you are asking for. And in the process, you display your ignorance to the banker. Let's say, in just a few minutes back, I explained to you about the term loan and the working capital. So if you're buying a equipment, let's say, which is going to give you, let's say, boiler, which will probably help you for the next 10 years. You have to ask the banker a term loan. If you ask for working capital and you say you want to buy a boiler, it's not possible, because in the case of loans, the bankers will do a end user monitoring. That means what have you taken the loan for and how you are using it. So often if we get an application saying that, I need 30% equity, 70% loan and all that, we try to probe a little bit more and see what exactly you need it for. And then we find that quite often people make these kind of mistakes. Not calculating the working capital needed. That, when you do a requirement of fund flow, that is basically one of the statements that I showed you earlier. The sources and application of funds. In the application of funds, you also need to provide the working capital that you need, without which, you cannot do your day-to-day operations. Not capturing or inaccurate capital expenditure. So you need a clear understanding of what capital expenditures are, and some of them are not so visible. Like I said, if you want to develop a 100 megawatt solar farm, you're talking about developing 500 acres of land. So, and probably somewhere in the middle of a desert. So you will need access points, you will need transportation, you will need buildings. So all that, you have to be very specific in what you ask for. Sometimes people ask just a lump sum, and you wonder why. Say, for example, people ask, I've got applications where they say that we are setting up a 20 megawatt project and we need $25 million or $30 million. And then you wonder, why do you need so much? Because to set up a 1 megawatt solar farm today, it takes 3.5 acres of land, and it takes $600,000. So why are you asking 25 million for 20 megawatt? Then you start digging in, and then they say, oh, no, there is a, for the power evacuation, we need to put a 25-kilometer power line to link the farm with the nearest transformer or something, and that costs this much. So then, we have to figure out how much is for the solar farm, how much is for the peripherals like this and all that. So it's better to split and provide as much details as you can on the capital expenditure. Next, mismatch between investment ask and business plan. This, it is a careless mistake if you do that, in a written application where you have the business plan, you say, I need 20 million, 25 million equity or debt. Let's say I need 5 million equity, 20 million debt. When it comes to your financial modeling, you have to show the same thing. If you change it, then, you will wonder whether you want 20, and plus 5, or let us say that here you are asking for 15 plus 10. So then, you waste one more round of discussion with your banker if you're not clear about what you are asking in both the documents should be the same. Seeking debt without existing operations. This is, unless you have a very strong PPA, that is a power purchase agreement, it is not possible to raise debt without any existing operation. Suppose you are a utility scale power generating company, then it is possible because let's say you have the PPA with the government and you have a fixed price that is payable to you over the next 20 years. Then it is possible for a banker to take a call on that and say, okay, I can consider a higher debt. And even at the start, because the moment you start generating the power, you're going to get that whatever is, 5 cents, 10 cents, whatever is your PPA that is accepted with the government. So most often these distribution companies are government. Well, so you think you're taking a quasi sovereign risk and banks are reasonably comfortable. So you have that, but these days you also have, these kind of quasi-government companies challenging the PPA later because the cost of generation is coming down and they don't want to pay the older rates. So you should be aware that those kind of risks have started emerging today. Poor visibility to provide an attractive exit for equity investors. So equity investors are not going to be with you forever. They come, they give you, let's say, 25% or whatever you are offering for an X amount. They want to take 3x or 4x back with them. They themselves have to, pay the people who have invested in their fund. So they have a responsibility for that. You have to have a very clear understanding of when you can give an attractive exit to the equity investors. Navigate this negative cash balances in balance sheet and cash flow. This again is a very fundamental error due to lack of knowledge on accounting. You can't have a minus cash figure in a balance sheet. Cash will always be positive. If you say cash on hand has to be positive. Project seeking low cost foreign currency debt without adequate hedging risk. That you must have seen. You must be very aware of this risk in Pakistan. I think just a couple of days back we saw rupee hitting an all-time low against dollar, I think. So that kind of a thing can boomerang on anybody who takes a loan without foreign currency hedging. because the liability can just multiply overnight. So that's a highly risky situation. Even people who have natural hedge in say exporting, they should take this, because your job is not to make money on foreign currency volatility. Your job is to make money by providing your service or goods that you sell. So focus on that and fix your costs. And you can fix your cost only when you have adequate hedging for your foreign currency exposures. Steep valuation of equity investor for an early stage project. Early stage or otherwise, steep valuation is always a problem. For a project developer, he always thinks that his project is the best and wants the best rate. Nothing wrong with that, but you have to be reasonable. You have to understand the downsides of the investment into such this one, because in a private equity there is no liquidity until there is a chance that it may go to IPO, or there is a chance that some bigger company may acquire. Otherwise, liquidity is the biggest problem for getting out of a smaller company. But nevertheless, most of the entrepreneurs don't accept this, and quite often the deals fall through because the valuations are not agreed upon between the investor and the project promoter. And there are a couple of ways which have emerged. Now you work out a formula, and then based on that, you give a convertible note or a convertible preference shares or something like that, where you get a runway of about 3 to 5 years, and after which the conversion will happen on a pre-agreed formula. These are things, our coach will help you to understand better as we go forward. Mismatch and sources of application. So if you want to set up a project with the 10 million, you have to raise 10 million. You can't say I will raise 9 million or I will raise 11 million. So both should match. And in many cases, the applications do not match. So yeah, so that was like I gave you a gist of what we see in the financial projections and the normal mistakes that people make. There are plenty more, but then I was thinking that we will have an interactive session. But as I see, there are not many questions. But if you want to ask any question now also, please go ahead. But let me come back to you, Judith. I'm not sure how much time is there, but I'm depending on you for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Naragaja. We actually have two questions. One is from Shahid Rajit. He's asking what tools are mostly used for calculations and preparation of business proposals for energy efficiency.
What tools are mostly used for calculating and preparation of business proposal for energy efficiency? Thank you, Judith, and thank you, Shahid. So what in this particular case, oh, did I miss that question? I was reading that question, sorry. That question disappeared. Okay. So that, like I mentioned somewhere earlier in my presentation, we have to look at a few things like how we are going to demonstrate the money that you are going to save to the client. In the case of energy efficiency, typically, what are the energy costs? That is first and foremost ascertained. Then what are the maintenance costs? What are the replacement costs? These are like, given. Certainly there will be a downtime. Once you have all that, then you have, at what price you can generate a unit cost. So that is why unit cost is so important. At what price you think that unit will cost. That is compared with the existing cost of electricity or heat or whatever you're saying. So then you arrive at what is the annual savings. Then total savings over that period of your life cycle of that product or service or the design that you have provided. Then what is the investment that it will take to put this line into implementation, and your payback period. So payback period could be 3 years, 4 years, 1 year, whatever. That depends upon how much saving is possible. Suppose you are saying that it is a 20% saving, then it may take you 5 years to recover. So it depends again on the investment. Suppose you are very good at design, but you don't need so many investments to make it happen. Then you have a better margin. You will have a faster payback period. So based on that, we have to calculate the return on investments, which is one way of understanding, whether your proposition is profitable or not. The payback period is another one. The project developer or the project promoter would be very interested in, say, if you say that you have to put 500,000 in the solution, he would like to know how quickly he will get back that money. And that is what we call as the payback period. Then the net present value, this is a bit technical, but what we are saying is that if you have a cash flow which generates an X amount over a period of time, what is its today's value? Because a value of a rupee 1 year down the line is not the same as what it is today, and that is what this net present value captures. So these are the various ways of looking at it. Internal rate of return is another way of looking at it, where we plot the cash flow and calculate the internal rate of return. What it means is that whatever cash you generate is reinvested into the business at the same rate. That is the underlying assumption. If that happens, what would be the internal rate of return? Then you have a hurdle rate. Let's say your hurdle rate is 10%. If it crosses 10%, then it is a good proposition for you. If it doesn't, then the proposition is not good for you, is the final conclusion from the internal rate of return mechanism or the tool that we talk about.
Thanks, Nagaraja. We have a hand raised, so I will give the floor to Syed Aslam. So please, I think now
please inform the kind of security or a pledge required by investor to attract through PFAN for project by investor.
I think we can also, yes, we have him.
Normally banks pledge either land or building. Okay, let me answer this.
Nagaraja, one second. He's speaking. So let's hear from him.
Basically, your whole presentation works around the feasibility studies. Normally, when we select some suppliers, they will provide us the cash flow sometime, what cash flow will be generated from it. They will get the whole data from us and they provide the feasibility. But there is nothing mentioned in your presentation which kind of sort of collateral required by the investors. From there, we raise investment through PFAN.
No, Salim, sorry, Saeed, I think. The thing is that PFAN doesn't lend or invest. We are only we are only a facilitator. So it will still be with your supplier or with your banker or with your investor that you will raise the money. So therefore, what is important here is just to repeat for everybody's benefit. PFAN is a program that is donor funded, and in UNIDO we execute this for the benefit of the entrepreneurs in developing countries. The idea is to help the entrepreneurs in developing countries to raise private sector finance, which will help help in reducing global warming, because we are supporting green energy projects. So therefore, PFAN is not directly invested, or it is not like an IFC or a World Bank or any of those where we invest or lend. If that is clear to you, Shahid?
Yes, it's clear.
Thank you. Back to you, Judith.
Thank you, Nagaraja. So yeah, we have more questions from Rashid, sorry. So he's asking, what's the minimum profit ratio that should a company plan at the start to calculate its IRR? And is there any guideline, because it's ultimately affect on all calculation, it is project cash flow and PV payback?
Right. See, the IRR calculation reflects the cash flow. So there are no different ways of doing it. Everywhere it is the same way, because it's a accounting practice that is accepted worldwide. So you have on day zero how much money is going out of your pocket. So that is a negative figure because you are spending that money. And over a period of time, you will get your cash flow. In month one, you may realize 100,000, month two, maybe 10% more. Then you may not realize anything if there is a problem in production for the next 2 days, whatever it is. So the idea is, one, you have a minus figure when you are spending, and pluses when you are getting back the money. And you calculate the internal rate of return based on a specific cash flow. So two things are very important for you to calculate an IRR. One is the dates on which your cash flow happens, whether it is plus or minus, and the amount which is either going out of your business or coming into your business. So if you have that, you can calculate the internal rate of return, and that will determine whether you want to invest in that project or not.
Thanks, Nagarajan. He has a follow-up question as well. You said that the cash flow shouldn't be negative for the company, but at the start of the project, it's usually negative. Please explain further.
Yes, that I can do. It's a little different. You see, cash flow should not be negative for the company. There are two different things that you are saying here, or what I was saying here. One is the projections. Say, for example, projections on the first year of the balance sheet. You can't show that you are having a minus $50,000 cash. But you can show on the other side, that is on the liability side of the balance sheet, that you have taken 50,000 loan from your father, or you're taken 50,000 loan from a bank next door. That is possible. But you can't have a negative cash balance in your balance sheet. That is how people show sometimes, they make this mistake where they show cash balance minus $50,000. Now, how will you proceed with that? You can't. So you can have a negative cash balance, but you can't spend more than what you have. So you will need to take a loan to bridge that gap. That is what I meant. But yes, when you try to do these kind of technical things, say over 20-30 minutes, these kind of things happen. But thank you for asking that.
Thank you, Nagarajan. We have two more questions. The first one from Valen Gudin. Do you think is it feasible to embark on energy efficiency projects even if the company has already higher leverage?
Certainly, because you see, one of the primary things that an energy efficiency solution gives you is savings in cash. So if you are leveraged, there are other options to do it. See, for example, if you go through the ESCO model, what I understand from my colleagues in UNIDO Pakistan is that ESCO model is yet to come into Pakistan. But otherwise, if you take that, the ESCO, that is the energy efficiency company, provides the capital equipment, provides the solution, and you share the savings. So therefore, your balance sheet is not actually getting leveraged. You are able to earn because there is a savings in the energy, and that is split between you and the service provider. So therefore, what happens over a period of time, the ESCO realizes his capital and his profits, and then you can have a different sharing ratio between you and the ESCO. So it is not necessary that you will end up with a higher leverage. It depends upon, and also the energy efficiency projects are not really, they can't compete with your overall leveraging, because by and large, they are small projects. So you can, if I see your cash flow, I can tell you whether, whether you should borrow more or you should not.
I just, if you don't mind, I'll add to that question which has been asked right now. So locally in the local domestic market, there's also a concept of just buying a PPA for a tenor of a period. So a company which is interested in cutting down on their costs as far as energy costs are concerned, they can even approach a company or an entity which sells them a PPA, power purchase agreement, to supply electricity at a certain rate. So highly leveraged companies have an option to approach that route also for clean energy or renewable energy.
Thank you, Shehzad. Shehzad is one of our invitees for the panel that is coming up now. Thank you for helping me there, Shehzad. Back to you, Judith.
Thanks to both of you. So we have one last question from Ahmed Javed. It's several questions, but all go around the same. Will you help us prepare feasibilities in green energy to attract investors? If you have, please share guidelines or tools that will help us make feasibilities. And will you also help us in connecting with investors?
Yeah, thanks. Yes, we do that in PFAN, but certain caveats. One is your project should be chosen by PFAN to assist. So you have to apply for PFAN. My colleague Ghazal Jabbar will be talking to you later today. So he will tell you how to apply and how PFAN selects projects and all that. So when we say we help you, we guide you to do that. We don't do it ourselves. The idea is that you should own the project that you are implementing. So we will help you how to do that. So you can take ownership of what you are doing. So we will certainly tell you how you should be ready for before you go in front of the investor.
Thank you, Nagaraja. So with this, I think we don't have any more questions. Let's wait maybe one more minute if there's any more questions. Otherwise, we could also move to the next session, and if any more questions come up, we will also have some time at the end of the panel. So yeah, so if it's okay with all of you, we will move to the next session, which is a panel discussion. It's also a pleasure to have all these panelists from commercial domestic banks and also the Central Bank of Pakistan. So they will be sharing their experience in financing energy efficient projects in Pakistan, which will be also relevant for you to prepare your financial models. I would like to invite all the panelists that are gonna be part of this discussion. The first one is, you know him already, Shehzad Abdullah. He has been associated with the financial sector for over 18 years. Currently, he's working as the head of the Structured Finance and Advisory Unit at Skari Bank. He has an in-depth understanding of debt capital markets, debt restructuring, advisory, remedial account management, and private public placements, project finance, and corporate finance transactions. The second panelist is Saad Reyes. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing well your names. He's currently working as unit head in the investment banking department at Allied Bank. He brings with him a diversified experience in the financial sector of almost 14 years with expertise in origination and execution of both on-balance sheet and off-balance sheet transactions, including debt syndications, project finance, equity, and advisory. The third panelist is Shahid Malik. He's the head of products, the small medium enterprises at Bank Al Falah, and has over 20 years of diversified global experience. He has expertise in setting up new businesses with a specialty in emerging markets and designing financial inclusion solutions. And last but not least, we have Imran Ahmad. He's the additional director of the Development Finance Support Department at the State Bank of Pakistan Banking Services Corporation. So welcome to all of you, and I'll hand it over to you, Nagaraja, as you will be moderating the session.
Thank you, Judith. And I once again take this opportunity to welcome, such a great panel of speakers today. We are fortunate to have you all here because of the good offices of UNIDO Pakistan and my colleagues in Vienna. We have you here. I request all the participants to take full advantage of this. We have really a galaxy of speakers today. And I would now request, I'll invite each of you to speak very briefly, about one or two points that is close to your heart regarding credit dispensation in Pakistan and how the project developers or the consultants or the energy auditors should approach you for any energy efficiency project that may require finance. So I request first Mr. Imran Ahmed from State Bank of Pakistan. That is an iconic bank in Pakistan who have got, I think he was telling me yesterday that he has a product which is at 6% interest. I mean, that's amazing, if you are getting local currency at 6% without any foreign currency risks. I would leave it to Mr. Imran to tell us more about this, but over to you, Mr. Imran. And you can please switch on your cameras. You're all on the panel along with me, so please feel free to switch on your cameras. So, Mr. Imran, over to you.
Thank you very much, Nagaraja and Judith, for facilitating this very important webinar. Uh, um, we are working on primarily on renewable energy financing, which of course in our view is is also one form of energy efficiency. And since a few years, we have been working for promotion and development of SME financing as well in Pakistan. Because if we see in the past, banks used to have good percentage of basic financing to private sector financing, which then dropped in the later part of 2008, 9, 10. And then since 2015, it has started peaking. And of course, renewable energy is an important area for us, as mentioned by Mr. Nagaraja, that there is a scheme in Pakistan through which we are trying to provide subsidized financing at the rate of 26%. And the good thing is that it is not subject to change on year basis. It is locked for whole period of financing. Consumer can avail it, SMEs can avail it, corporates, consumer can avail it, and even even the vendors dealing in renewable resources, particularly the solar energy, they can also avail this sort of financing. And one more thing is that we are focusing on this renewable energy for SME financing as a sector of the year for starting from July this year, and will continue working on this in coming months to facilitate SMEs all over Pakistan to avail this sort of financing. I think that will be enough for this time. As we move forward, we can talk on more issues later.
Sure. Thank you, Imran. Now let me move to Shahid Abdullah. Shehzad Abdullah from Askari Bank. Shehzad, over to you.
Thank you for having me here, everybody. It's a pleasure to be working or speaking on this panel with you all. Rao, I think you mentioned a couple of things which were close. First, I think this is a very good session. The very important topic which Rao has talked about, financial model. We tend to all get overwhelmed by it. I think the main focus should be that it doesn't have to be a fancy looking document or an Excel sheet. It just needs to have some very realistic, robust numbers in terms of assumptions. So when we generally develop a business plan, when we conceive the idea and that translating into numbers, I think there's a mismatch over there. So I feel that if the assumptions are really thought out, they're clean and realistic and quantifiable compared to what the market is, then I think those models are something which financiers or equity holders find it much more easier to look at. But I think a well thought out structure doesn't need to be a 500-line assumption document. It needs to be very clear cut, business focused business model which makes cash flows make sense. They shouldn't need to have those large value destroyers of 20-25% just to rationalize it. So I think that's very important. Renewable energy efficiency is not as complicated in terms of how the cash flow should look like. So I think that's another positive which we should build on while making business models or financial plans. Business plan feasibility and the model go hand in hand. So if you feel we've built up a document that's a marketing document, it's not. It has to match up with your model. That's another very key important point. Number three, I feel we've got some very good panelists and I think stakeholders. We have two challenges here. Small and medium enterprises businesses definitely get challenged in terms of providing tangible security. That remains to be a very key or paramount issue in the domestic market right now. So although from there's also a lack of building up documents or business plans in a structured environment, but also access to finance also has to be requires a tangible security. That remains to be a challenge, and I think the tenor which is offered is also limited. So by that I mean is somebody looking at in the northwest or in mid country trying to put up a hydro projects, how they built out, even the small ones, how they built out is they have a fairly long gestation period. So I feel if there is subsidized financing or there is financing available to provide the springboard for SMEs to put up those businesses, then I think you need longer tenor money available in terms of debt, and also you need a lot of patient capital in terms of equity also. So I think those are a few other things, requirements which I think are important to actually see some kind of real development in the renewable and energy financing area, especially for SME and commercial businesses. Um, these are two things which I found to be very important. I'll hand it over to.
Yeah.
If there's a
Thank you,
question I
Shahzad.
can answer, I'm happy to do that also.
Yes. Thank you, Shahzad. Beautifully encapsulated, I would say, the crux of the matter. Now I invite Saad Riaz. He's from Allied Bank Limited. Saad, your experience and your something that you would like to share with us as things that are most important in your mind.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity and the session that you've conducted thus far. I guess you yourself have put it out, and Shahzad has also alluded to it. And in my experience, where the bankability of particularly the projects which are coming through the SME sector gets impacted is because there's a lot of difference in the various projects that do come across, right? So if company X is putting up a 1 mega project, they'll be putting up ABC parameters, and then when company B comes with the exact same project, they'll be putting up DEF parameters. So from a lender's perspective, when you evaluate the two, you're unable to develop confidence in the whole process, as so it were. So I mean, what I think trying to allude to is that if there is a move towards standardization of how the whole value proposition can be presented as lenders, which you have also spoken of, so that particular standardization will help the overall bankability of the sector as a whole. And yes, we spoke about it yesterday as well. It's an evolutionary process. I mean, where we are right now, the West has been there in the past, even countries in the region have been there in the past, but they've come up the curve and they've evolved. So from Pakistan's perspective, yes, at this point in time, particularly when you look at these energy efficiency projects coming up from the SME sector or from smaller scale businesses, it seems like a very challenging road. Preparation of a financial model in itself seems very daunting at times, but it's something that once the first couple of businesses or the first set of businesses get through, it becomes a process which can then be replicated in terms of legal documentation, in terms of financial models, in terms of power purchase agreements, in terms of how the facilities are structured. So yes, it's an evolutionary process, but it has to be a consistent move towards that evolutionary process, which in its essence needs to be guided by the regulators, which is for the banks, the State Bank, and also there has to be a general push towards this move, a consistent push towards the renewable sector from the government, not something which, like you said, comes up whenever oil price crosses 80. So it has to be a consistent effort that goes on, because that evolutionary process is the only way which we're going to streamline and things will become simpler and more standardized. Also in terms of again the facilities that are there from State Bank, again they fall under three different categories. So Specifically for category 3 projects, the rollouts have been very limited. The disbursements under that would be minuscule, if at all. And again, it boils down to, again, a lack of, at times, an understanding on the part of the people coming in for project development, and then coupled with the overall existing parameters of the industry, of the banking industry, which don't sort of gel in with the project that's coming in, whereby, we keep asking for land and building and tangible collateral, where a project in its essence may not be able to offer that. So there has to be a bridging of gap there as well. Essentially, what I personally feel is that there is no way forward for us as a country and as people, as the human race, to opt away from fossil fuels and to move towards more sustainable and renewable energy. But again, the processes and the framework needs to be a little more streamlined, a little more aligned for the whole process framework to work. So which I personally feel is a time-consuming process and will take some time to I guess be put in place.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. This is so good to hear from you. The regulatory push that is required and the learnings from the other countries, and the fact that everybody has taken this journey, and Pakistan is no different or will be no different, and we have to be at it. And renewable energy is the solution that we are seeking. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now I move to Shahid Malik from Al Falah. Shahid, over to you.
Well, thank you, Rao. You've already elaborated quite a bit on the requirements and the prerequisites. Need not to beat the same bush again and again. So I'll just get to my point. As an analyst, if I review an application or a project, the first thing I would evaluate, or I usually evaluate, is the need. And the second thing which I rely on is the credibility of that need. And the third thing is the commitment. If all of these three things are combined, that would make up the best of the business plans, that would make up the best of the numbers, and you keep these three things aligned, you can't go wrong, actually. The need, the credibility, and the commitment. With these three things, if you have these in mind, you're passionate about your project, you will put the exact numbers, you will make sure that keeping these three things, you're clinging on to all these three things, and what you're doing is you're making sense of your presentation. That's what counts a lot. And especially financing within the SME sector, their numbers, their balance sheets, the cash flows, I normally put everything on the side and I just start analyzing, is the need there? Is there an appetite for it? How committed is the individual? And how credible is the whole scenario? So based on these 3-4 pillars, I normally have to take my decision, because the majority of the numbers people come around, they've been developed by those freelancers, and they're basically merely put in together just to crunch the numbers. So we need not to shy away from the ground realities. The ground realities stated out that if a person is very clear and passionate about a certain project, they would not go wrong. So to me, how they put it in front of me and how they walk me through the project, that's what makes sense to me. Now coming over to the phases of, first is requirement and the need of energy. And the second phase I counted as how to conserve it. Pakistan right now, as I would put it, we've been very rigorously involved in the much talked about regulators, solar energy or renewable energy financing. But the major thing which I've come across is right now there's a need, there's an appetite, there's a commitment, and there's a passion about acquiring that renewable energy. Once they means the SMEs, once they've acquired it, only then they can take the next step, which would be how to conserve it, how to use it to the best possible, how to use it in the best possible way, I would call it. So I would separate them, although a very thin line in there, but the first thing is how they acquire it. And once they've acquired it, then how they use it to their maximum benefit. These SMEs are basically self-sustainable businesses who normally operate without any added support. They're very resilient, and hats off to their resilience. That's the reason they survive through. And if they're able to survive through the first 3 years of their existence, I don't see of an SME which would be making out a loss or would have negative cash flows or would have anything negative about the whole business. So rather than creating a new dimension to it, I would say that we are at the phase 1, which is acquiring that renewable energy. And the phase 2 would be how to use it properly and manage it properly. So these are my 2 cents about it. Yes, challenges are there and if the challenges are there, that's the reason we are there.
Yes.
Had challenges not been there, then they won't have felt the use of having people like us around.
Yeah, beautifully put, Shahid. Very nice. Actually, the way you captured the need and the concept, how we look at the credibility and then the commitment of the promoters is what matters. Now, that leads me to a question that must be on top of everybody's mind. And I think one of our participants also asked, about the collateral security that countries that go through the phase that we are in is something that hinders the growth of credit and also the growth of business. So do you subscribe to this view, or that, how soon Pakistan would be ready to look at project-based cash flows for lending rather than balance sheet lending on hard collaterals? What is your take on this, Shahid?
Rao, sorry for cutting in. Actually, you'd be surprised. It's been 3 years. We've moved away. We have rather shied away from that myopic collateral requirement or collateral appetite for the financial institutions. As far as speaking on behalf of my own organization I'm representing, we have moved away from that. My renewable energy is totally cash flow based. No collateral requirement to a certain requirement. Yes, of course, there's a saying, oh, our forefathers have been doing it like that, so we need to do it like that.
This is very good news. You will see my colleague Ghazal sitting in your office tomorrow.
Most welcome. The thing is, we've gone collateral free, and you won't believe it, sharing with the rest of the folks around, my colleagues over here, esteemed colleagues over here. My collateral free or cash flow based lending has much lesser overdues or NPLs or anything like that, adverse in terms of portfolio as compared to the collateral based ones.
Not surprised, because you've got such an incisive way of looking at it. Congratulations on moving away from the traditional way of looking at it. I'm sure the Pakistan promoters will be more than happy to benefit from you.
A 3-year learning curve on that. So 3 years are more than enough to give you a depiction whether there's an infection in a portfolio, whether it's going to go bad, is it sinking ship or something like that. But honestly, the more we have moved or clinged on towards the collateral free ambit and more reliance on the cash flows and the ground realities, the qualitative factors reliance has been much more fruitful as compared to our quantitative factors, where we use crunch numbers and grant facilities based on the crunch numbers. The qualitative aspect has given us much better results. And these are just I'm talking small businesses, not even the medium ones. So what to talk about the rest?
Right. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Shehzad, one question for you. Have you seen cluster approach in Pakistan, especially for this kind of renewable energy and energy efficiency? Because energy efficiency, the cluster approach is something that benefits the entire, the smaller players in that cluster as well as the medium-sized players. That would be beneficial to the entire sector.
No, I haven't seen the cluster model of financing at all. At least not my experience. I have not seen it. But increasingly, I think what we started seeing is that we started seeing as the grid level is now backed up to quite an extent. Power generation, we started seeing a lot of distributed power generation capacity building up under different models. So that's something which we are seeing more frequently. And hence, while you were giving your presentation, I'd interrupted and also added on the fact that wherein leveraged companies felt like if they had the capacity, so small businesses or parts of new entities have started offering power purchase agreements, and that has an impact. There is some discussion on cluster or ideas, but nothing which I've seen which is substantiated as yet.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I suppose.
Nagaraja, one thing.
Yes, please. Yes, please go ahead.
Related with your question. Basically, what I heard last time 2 or 3 years ago, when I was attending a Sialkot Chamber of Commerce and Industry presentation for the renewable energy projects. So thereby, they were also trying to woo the investors for cluster of industries for having some renewable, because in Sialkot Association, we have a very exporters, small size factories, but they are very progressive and they were thinking about on these lines. I don't know what is the latest situation, but that was, I just saw and heard last time if we had a presentation.
Right. I think, Masroor, that would be something that we can talk, offline and then come back to these people so that our panelists can take a look at it and we can see whether that is something that we can facilitate for the cohort of projects that you have assembled for this session.
Just to add one more point, as far as cluster, there has been a company incorporated, I think, within and it intended to offer clusters or use the wheeling regulations to allow selling electricity to smaller industries or industries which have a fairly good demand and demand for electricity, but they need a slight headroom in terms of meeting their consistent requirements at a reasonable rate. But that wheeling actually has not really been tested as yet, although the regulation stands there. So there is a capacity given multiple factors to come in and offer smaller power purchase agreements and offer it within an industrial area.
Thank you. Thank you, Syed. Sad, I have a question for you. Irrespective of whether it is, say, energy efficiency or renewable energy or whichever, in your opinion, what is the most common mistakes people make when they come to a banker seeking a loan? You know, what are the normally, you know, they slip up and then sort of that sets them back.
You see, Nagreja, the essence of the proposition again has to be in its simplicity and clarity.
Yes.
So by propping it up through whatever mechanisms that people generally feel need to be propped up, that's not how it is. The clarity from the thought to what is presented in terms of a model or in terms of a bankable proposition is at times where the gap is, and that's where I think people tend to falter or have lapses. So that process again needs to be a little more standardized or worked upon, and it needs to be done in a stepwise and phase-wise manner, whereby basic stuff like what the feasibility is or where the project is going to be heading towards, that needs to be sort of clearly displayed. In terms of your the clustering question that you asked, there are certain smaller, very small projects that are taking place in the agri sector, which are in the unorganized sector. So there's a big scope there, with Pakistan being agrarian and all. So there is a lot of scope there, but again, it's on a smaller scale, and they operate in smaller scale.
Right. Thank you so much. Judith, how are we doing on the time? Do I have time for one more round of questions with our panelists, or do we move to Q&A with the audience?
Yes, we still have some time. Yeah, until 10 to 5.
Good.
With also the questions from the audience.
Right. So let us take one more round of questions with our panelists then. One of the things that we see in energy efficiency is they say that 1 unit generated is 2 units saved. Sorry, 2 units saved is unit generated is 2 units saved. Okay, so what I would like to know is that when you have an energy efficiency project on hand, because they are small in number, have you seen opportunities for aggregating such projects and looking at it from the point of view of securitization, or in terms of bundling it for the sake of economy of evaluation and funding? What has been your experience in this, Shehzad?
So interesting you asked that question. We are currently looking at.
Oh, very good.
I think you had some insight asking that question. But
actually, I'm across the border, so
so what we're looking at right now, or we're trying to look at, is that so we have one of the larger players coming in, and they would like to get into distributed solar. And they want to look at under 2 models. They want to look at it under the PPA model, and they want to look at it from the EPC, deferred EPC payment model. So from the position of where I sit is the individual size of the projects are too small. So how we're trying to look at it is that we conduct due diligence on different aspects of it. So the person who's going to be selling the PPA, the company, we evaluate that, their capacity, their ability, understanding, intent, and where they're going, the market they're trying to service. That's one. And number 2, we want to look at which persons, companies, industries are going to be the buyers of it. How we want to segregate is that we are looking at putting up a master facility of about, let's say, 2 billion or a billion, right? And then but separated by EPC and by PPAs. So if you do a PPA model, I would say give me 15 names. I will clear out 5 or 6 names or 7 names, whatever. Master facility with fairly common terms and conditions. And then under each master facility, you keep on drawing down a separate obligor for smaller entities. I mean, ideally, we would like to start with industrial customers where there is a clear quantitative savings in terms of their operational costs. And that operational cost savings could be captured as my repayment. So it's being done by, we had looked at one previously, and it's being done right now. And we are currently ourselves also looking and trying to figure it out. And in that, we wanted to club together the state bank financing scheme, which is available for renewable energy financing. So it's a work in progress, at least at my end. But I think it's a doable thing because there is a specific requirement or I would say a business mandate goal requirement to have that kind of quantum to do successfully, finance large projects. It's more efficient rather than doing individual very small projects from a project finance or a greenfield project basis.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I mean, it's good to know that things are like you have products which will really benefit the sector in the immediate future, and the numbers that you are talking also are that will make a difference. That's excellent.
You see, the numbers, the numbers make sense, right? So
yes.
If that starts making sense, the market starts making sense, it becomes more plausible, right? Secondly, I think going back, I'm just going to pull back onto one really important point. When we generally in the market, when we try and see, or companies try and see sessions or access to capital, the concept sometimes is, I'm not structured, but there's some capital available, let me go grab it, right? And that what happens is that the outlay of the business plan is not as robust, or as Shahid Malik said, that the project clarity is not there at times. So I think it helps in understanding the qualitative side also, if you really have a real plan and you put it together.
Thank you. Shahid, the question for you, it is excellent that you have such deep analysis of the projects. So given that, I would like to know, have you considered flexible repayment based on the revenue generated by the company, revenue-based loans, as we call it, which has come up in the last couple of years in the markets? If that is the case, then, it fits in like a hand in glove as far as cash flow-based repayments are concerned. So is there something that is happening in your markets?
Well, we have started test trials and they've been on for the past 6 months. And it requires, actually it burdens the relationship manager in that account, that whenever there's a flexibility on things, at times the things are not going because this COVID thing has ruined all the anticipations and all the patterns or all the flexibility there as well. So we had that planned a year and a half ago, but have been able to implement it for the past 6 months. And I'm very serious on this. I'm bent upon the fact that the variable payback, or in few of the products, we have come up with a concept of balloon payments, give option to a client whether they want to pay back earlier with no penalties or anything like something similar to it. So we have given it a test trial. It's worked wonderfully well, and I'm a firm believer on that account So it's, I would not say it's too early to comment on it. It's need of the hour, but that needs to be very well deliberated and understood by a person, by an entity who is seeking a facility, and by the entity who is extending the facility. So they need to be very considerate of each other.
Yes.
So that factor I've not been able to plug in so far the way it should be actually. So there are downstreams to it that one tries to haggle the other one around. And we live in a world where there are opportunities and there are opportunists used on the negative as well as the positive impact. But so far the test trial and the capability to acquire a systematic approach towards lending out and making out flexibilities, we try that in agriculture quite a bit. I've done that for agricultural facilities where we have tied the flexibilities and their capability to pay off during the peak crop selling season and lower it down in the early seasons and match up with the cyclical product cycle. And it's worked wonderfully well. At the bottom line, yes, it has worked wonderfully well. But how long would the industry take to acquire it and start believing in it? It's going to take at least 4 to 5 years till the time we develop our side of maturity as a facility extender and the facility acceptor. Both have to attain that mental level, I would call it. It's nothing more. There's no rocket science in there. It's just a mental level. That mental bridge needs to be bridged, I would call it.
Yes. Thank you, Shahid. That's excellent. And I hope all our project developers are listening to all of you very carefully, like you're given such encouraging response to the needs of the market. I would like to go to Imran Ahmed if he's back into the meeting. Is he back in the meeting? Zareen, can you please tell me whether Imran is back?
Imran Saab is not yet back, but if any input on the policy side is needed, please do let me know. If possible, I may give an input or two.
Oh, that would be very nice. So, one of the things that State Bank of Pakistan would take the responsibility is as the main banker to the country, you would probably have more responsibility with regard to sector development and towards renewable energy as well as energy efficiency. So from that point of view, I just would like to know as a policy, if you could just explain what's the kind of minimum threshold that you have for accepting a proposal and what kind of credit rating do you look at for the 6% loan scheme that you have launched, and whether you look for hard collateral or would you look at cash flow based assessment. A few tips for people to approach you is something that would help our audience in making sure that they are well prepared before they come to State Bank of Pakistan.
Thank you so much, Nagaraka Saab, for your question. Actually, if you look at the kind of scheme that we have, this is a relationship that is between State Bank of Pakistan and our participating banks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if any borrower has to approach State Bank or approach the banks, particularly for availing this scheme with a markup of 6%, then they'll have to approach the banks. There are certain minimum requirements under the scheme. For instance, they have to have approvals from the provincial departments, from NEPRA and other boards as well. Then they are approaching the banks for the actual requirements under the scheme or under the loan that they need to look into. They have to comply with the requirements of the bank, basically. So this scheme is a relationship of State Bank with the bank itself. But when the end user is approaching us for this particular scheme, they'll have to go directly to the bank, and the bank is going to explain to them the requirements as per their own credit policy, including the requirements, the minimum requirements laid out under this scheme. So I feel if there are any requirements that any business needs to understand, then they'll have to approach the concerned bank for that. We do not have as such per se requirements for the borrowers, but these are just the minimum requirements that the banks have to fulfill when they are getting the information from the borrowers.
Thank you, Zareen. Excellent. And I'm sure people would have taken note of that. Saad, question to you. Do you have venture debt in Pakistan that projects can use in case they don't have adequate collateral? And is it something that is developing in the country?
See, venture capital or
venture debt. Yeah, sorry, venture capital, venture debt. Yeah, both you can take.
Yeah, venture capital, venture debt. From commercial banks, venture debt is something that we don't really do. As of now, we do project finance per se. I mean, that's the extent to which we, but that again has its own flavor to it. But venture capital, you see, access to capital is one of the main issues in Pakistan that is there, right? I mean, people with ideas don't have access to capital, and people with capital don't have the cognizant, sense to essentially where to go about and put it. So there's a concept of following the herd. So yes, there's a gap that's there. I mean, in terms of the depth of the market, the inclusion of and the broadening of the base, that's something that's been a discussion point for over a decade and a half or 2 decades now, but that's not something that we've really done a lot of groundwork on. So venture debt, venture capital, I think are you will find things that have happened in that arena, but it's not a recurring or a very structured thing that's happened.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Saad. So I think we are sort of coming to end of panel discussion, and I would like to once again thank Shahid, Shehzad, Imran, and Saad, and I think in the absence of Zareen, who has stepped in for Imran. Thank you so much for taking time to share your knowledge and your inputs in today's discussions. I'm sure all of our project developers and the consultants and the energy auditors would have benefited from this. Thank you so much, and I give it back to you, Judith.
Thank you, Nagaraja. We have reached the time of the end of this session, so perfect timing. And with this, I would like to give the word now to, well, first of all, thanks to all the panelists for joining us and for sharing their insights. I think it's going to be very useful for all the audience and also for us. And now, I would like to give the word to Ghazil Jabbar. He's the Deputy Chief of Party of the PFAN Pakistan Private Sector Energy Project, and he will shortly present this project to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith, and thanks for having me here as well. I happened to join in the session the last minute, but very, very informative discussion, and thanks to all the panelists, and thank you, Nagaraja, for for this insightful discussion points. Today, I'll just be very briefly discussing the PFAN project in Pakistan under the PPSE USAID funded platform. I have a very quick presentation which I would just share with you. If you could just bear with me for a second, please. Delay. Okay, so I'd be presenting to you today a very quick introduction around Private Financing Advisory Network and its dedicated project in Pakistan called the Pakistan Private Sector Energy Project. So what these two programs are, PFAN typically is works more like an investment bank providing advisory services to clean energy, low carbon, climate resilient projects across developing nations. They have partnered with UNIDO and REAP to launch a USAID funded project called Pakistan Private Sector Energy Project. And this is a dedicated project providing similar investment banking sell-side advisory services for clean energy in Pakistan. I'd just like to explain to you what the value proposition of this program is. So the PPSE is the dedicated program for PFAN in Pakistan. So I'd like to highlight that a bit more. And it builds upon, just this earlier discussion around, what the panelists were discussing around making projects bankable. So we here bridge the missing middle. We're trying to bridge the gap between projects and financiers and equity investors. So there's a limited supply of projects on one hand. There's an oversupply of projects, but they're not bankable. They're very poorly structured. These sponsors don't have the commercial and the financial skills, and they don't have the valuation expertise. So eventually they come up with unrealistic valuation expectations, and deals don't close. On the other hand, we got financiers and equity investors. There's a large pool of capital, but there's not enough focus on clean energy. There's not enough focus on the SME space. The products are not geared towards, smaller businesses and local sponsors. So we're trying to really bridge the gap here with the PPSE program. So we provide an advisory service to local SME project developers in the clean energy space. We advise them, making information memorandums, financial models, help them run an advisory process to raise money for their particular projects to achieve a financial close. So we're trying to make both these ends meet and develop, make these projects bankable and create the right structuring around these projects and also introduce them to potential equity investors and financiers in this process. Just a bit about what the PPSE team is in Pakistan. It's a USAID funded project. The implementation partner is PFAN, which is a global, it works like a global investment bank in developing countries. They're putting the technical expertise around this whole program. The hosting partners are UNIDO and REAP. We've got a dedicated team of 6 personnel on ground, and we are performing origination activities through outreach events, personalized approaches. We're developing relationships with FIs, trying to build some level of capacity with different products, as you saw from the matchmaking process. And we're, of course, taking out projects that have onboarded with us to equity investors and potential financiers. We have recently also launched the SME acceleration services, which provide early stage mentoring support, and which includes technical commercial angles around for new business startups. Then we have 11 advisors on ground who handhold these SMEs on a day-to-day basis. They're typically financial and climate experts, and they have very strong local expertise and local knowledge of making projects bankable and preparing them for investor readiness. So they are the key skill set that we have on ground, and this skill set is growing. We're looking to hire and engage more advisors as the number of projects are increasing across Pakistan. Our priority areas are very clear with us. We want to focus on the low carbon, climate resilient areas. As priority 1, we want to focus on e-mobility, rural electrification, energy access. This is, small solar solutions, for example, microgrids, e-mobility, we've opened across the entire supply chain. Then there's B2B captive. This is, captive solar power generation, more net metering, captive industrial units, and then bioenergy, rural electrification through biogas, biomass, bagasse, more for Sindh and Punjab areas. As priority 2, we have urban management. This is waste to energy, collection of waste, recycling, like plastic recycling projects could be, a potential project with us. Energy efficiency, as this program is focused on, I think we're really looking forward to projects in energy efficiency on, our platform as well. Then there's digital and fintech nexus, which primarily means any technology-oriented app or platform which helps raise, let's say, money for clean energy could be an example across it. And then, of course, the IPPs, wind, solar, which currently they're in the corporate space, but if there is an opportunity, we will pick that up as well. There are other pools of climate adaptation technologies and sectors which we can support on the PFAN platform. Just to conclude here, our application deadline is on rolling basis. Is not on rolling basis. It's quarterly basis. So the next application deadline is the 31st of October. So all those who have projects in our priority areas, we strongly encourage you to make an application with us via our website. Just as a reminder, this service is free for potential SME providers. However, there is a small success fee towards the end, but there's no retainer or milestone fee around it. So anyone who is interested in a project, you're more than welcome to make an application, or you feel free to contact me. I can support you with the initial application process as well. Thank you for this. Back to you, Judith. Thanks.
Thank you, Ghazil. You could have explained way more on this project. Sorry for the short time and the pressure, but I think the audience has have had a good understanding of the project so far. And if they have more questions, they will contact you for sure. So thanks a lot, Ghazil. And now I would like to give the word to Masroor and Umur for the closing of the training. Over to you, Masroor.
Thank you, Judith. So another good session on the bankable financing. And of course, the discussion from the panelists has been very, very soul-searching, and some very pertinent issues has been highlighted. And I suppose that it is right in saying that basically in Pakistan, we are going through an evolutionary phase when we talk about the renewable energy and energy efficiency regimes. So lot of things has to be done right now, and it's a good beginning that we are thinking on the lines on the things that to be done in the future. So I think this session will bring some impetus and some thing to think about how to proceed further in this direction. And I hope that in this REEE project, we have certainly provided a foundation for the PFAN projects to coming around in the future as well. So thank you, Judith.
Thank you, Masroor. Umur, yeah, the word is yours.
Thank you very much. Yeah, as Masroor said, I think it was another very good and informative session. To start with, of course, I thank Nagaraj for leading this session, for sharing PFAN's long-standing experience. I personally found it very useful to kind of transfer what we have learned and accumulated in the markets, global markets, actually over the last decade. And on the other hand, I'd like to thank all the panelists for the time they took to join this and then share their insights and their on-the-ground experience. I found them impressively accurate and relevant. So big thanks to everyone. One final thing, of course, we only had 2 sessions organized, and together with our colleagues with Masroor and his team. That doesn't mean that we have to stop our work here. We only scratch the surface of what we can do with you, what we can share our experience with you as a start, as a beginning. But there may be other areas you may be interested in learning from PFAN's experience and tap into PFAN's large network of experts. And I think we are open for further cooperation. We are open for further sessions. And I just want to prompt all of the attendees also to kind of submit their requests and wishes to Masroor, so that we can also concretely discuss some other areas of cooperation, some other areas where we can organize some more targeted session, delving deeper into those areas where you struggle, where you think that you may need more guidance and assistance, and where you think PFAN and PPC projects project can be of help for you. So I really hope that discussions will continue, and I just want to express our readiness to be there with you and to be there for you going forward as well. So thank you so much, and over to you, Judith.
Thank you, Umar. And with this, I think we are finished. I've left the emails from Nagaraja and Ghazil on the chat, so you can contact them directly, and also the website from PIFAN. So you can also check there the PIFAN Pakistan project. So thanks to all of you, thanks to the panelists, thanks to Nagaraj as well, to participants, Umar, Masroor, thanks a lot. And with this, I wish you a nice day and see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.